But they were really confused about Abdu'l-Baha because in 1934, most of the believers in the West had spent time with Abdu'l-Baha during his travels. They had a intense, strong personal connection to the master. And so to explain who he was, because he seemed so Christ-like, they couldn't imagine anyone being more lofty and majestic and kind and loving than Abdu'l-Baha. And yet he was nothing compared to his father. And they simply couldn't get their heads around that. So the guardian had to help them to understand this, because he's helping them to understand that they're not part of a social movement with good ideas. They are part of a whole new religion that has teeth to it, that has bones and structure and has laws. It has a God-ordained administration, which was not something that had ever been seen before in the world of religion. And to understand that, they had to understand who Baha'u'lláh was, that they weren't just paying allegiance to this wonderful person, Abdu'l-Baha. Martin, you have the Bob one up, not Baha'u'lláh. We need to go back to Baha'u'lláh. Yeah. So this is why this is so important. It's the fundamental verities of the faith, and something that Baha'is should be studying on a regular basis. Go back and look at it every once in a while, just to refresh this. So, in fact, I should tell you a story. When I was serving in Haifa, I got to know Ian Semple, who was one of the original 9 members of the Universal House of Justice. And he arrived in 1960 in the Holy Land because he, at that time, was elected to the International Baha'i Council. And while he was, in the first years he was there, he met an elderly lady who had lived in the Templar house where Baha'u'lláh visited when he became quite ill in 1891. And he was pitching his tent all over Mount Carmel in the Haifa area for about 3 months, and he became ill. And this wonderful German Templar family took him into the house to nurse him so he could get better without staying in his tent. And at the time, she was a little girl, so she remembered Baha'u'lláh. And so Ian Semple said to her, well, he couldn't imagine Baha'u'lláh being as kind and loving as Abdu'l-Baha was. And he said, she just looked at him and said, are you kidding me? He said, compared to Baha'u'lláh, Abdu'l-Baha wasn't kind and loving at all. And I know that that's really hard to get your head around, that concept, that someone could be infinitely more kind and loving than Abdu'l-Baha, but apparently Baha'u'lláh was. So the guardian in this is trying to give us this big picture of who these people are. So his section on the Bab, which we will do next week, is only 4 pages. So we'll probably also start the section on Abdu'l-Baha, which is twice as long, more than twice as long, almost 3 times as long as the section on the Bab. And then he has a very long section on Baha'i administration, which is a very important summary of Baha'i administration. So that will take us at least 1, maybe 2 sessions to go through that. Then following the dispensation of Baha'u'lláh, which he wrote in 1934, in 1936, he wrote the last of the World Order letters. And this is one where he is just inundating us with ideas and information. It goes on almost 40 pages. So it will probably take at least 2 and maybe 3 or 4 sessions to get through that last one. So I'm assuming it will probably take us close to the end of December, end of this year, to finish this book. So I hope you're all on for the ride and will stay with it. But I think you're going to be greatly rewarded for doing so. I was listening to a wonderful talk by the late former member of the Teaching Center, Violette Hack. And she was the niece of Hand of the Cause Samandari. and was talking about how the hands in Iran, like Mr. Furtan, told her that until the Guardians started explaining the dispensation, they did not understand it. The friends in Iran did not understand what Baha'u'lláh was trying to tell them until they had the interpretation of the Guardian. So this is very important material. Now, one last thing I just wanted to say is the next letter after this collection of letters we call the World Order letters is the Advent of Divine Justice. And that book is one letter all by itself. It's the letter that Shoghi Effendi wrote to the Western believers, especially to the North American believers, as World War II is starting. He writes it while he's in exile in Europe. He had to escape out of the Holy Land because of problems there in Palestine. And then he gets back just as the war is beginning in December, and he finishes it there and dispatches it. But he sends it to the United States because the German Baha'i community is already under the heel of the Nazi regime. England is going to war with Germany. France is already falling, as are a number of other countries in Europe. And Africa is already being affected by both Mussolini and the Nazis. Spain is in terrible shape. Australia is part of the Commonwealth. So is India. So Baha'i communities all over the world are falling. And the last place where it's still safe to be a Baha'i is the United States. So as the last bulwark, the Advent of the Divine Justice is his instructions in case the worst happens, to understand who we are as a Baha'i community, our history, what our mission is, and to give us our mission going forward. Most people only know Advent of Divine Justice because of the page or so that deals with the most challenging issue, but that's a tiny sliver of that work. So as we're finishing this book, I hope many of you will take some time in January and restudy Advent of Divine Justice. And then, of course, at the end of the war, or during the war and at the end of it, he writes the series of letters that's The Promised Day Has Come, and those are the ones that really deal with how terrible the world has become. And then in the 50s, he writes a series of letters that are published as Messages to America. So I just wanted to give you the context of where this is and where we are in our studying. All right, so Martine, I think you're going to have to be the one to scroll down to where we left off last week, which is about halfway through this document. Let's see.
Oh.
Further down, further down.
Are we here? No.
No, I had put a marker there, but I think actually we may have gone even farther than that.
Oh, right here.
Yeah, we're right in this area. Yeah, okay. All right, this is good. We can stop here at this. You can go up a little bit. Okay, here, by the righteousness of God. All right, so he begins the letter, as you remember, by talking about the fact that we are, at this point in 1934, we're 90 years from the declaration of the Bab, and he wants the friends to understand the fundamental verities. And in the beginning, he gives testimony as to the station of Baha'u'lláh. He lets the Bab talk about, he uses quotes from the Bab first to talk about the station of Baha'u'lláh, a few quotes from Baha'u'lláh himself, and then he uses some quotes from Abdul Baha to talk about the station. And then he has just talked about, in the section just ahead of this, about how all of the previous messengers of God had longed to attain Baha'u'llah's day. And I think that is a good place for us to start. Did anyone have any thoughts or questions or comments before we plunge in today?
I just wanted to say hello. I'm William.
Hi.
I'm Surush's roommate.
Oh, excellent. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We are so happy to have you part of this.
Sure. Yeah, thanks for letting me just kind of jump in
Well,
the middle of talking about Bahá'u'lláh.
So wonderful. Well, this is really important, this dispensation of Bahá'u'lláh. Rihya Khanum said in Priceless Pearl that according to Shoghi Effendi, he said everything he really needed to say is in Dispensation of Bahá'u'lláh, this booklet that we're now going through, which is in the middle of the World Order Letters. So this is really important. So tonight we're going to be talking about not only who Baha'u'lláh is, but his relationship to God, God's relationship to the messengers of God, and our relationship to other religions, so that we understand what it is we believe and what our relationship to the rest of the world's religions is. All right, so let's see. I can't see who to call on, so let's see here. John, can you read the first paragraph, please, after those little hashtags, by the righteousness of God?
Sure. By the righteousness of God, Baha'u'lláh, wishing to reveal the full potency of his invincible power, asserts: should a man, all alone, arise in the name of Baha and put on the armor of his love, him will the Almighty cause to be victorious, though the forces of earth and heaven be arrayed against him. By God, besides whom is none other God. Should anyone arise for the triumph of a cause, him will God render victorious, though tens of thousands of enemies be leagued against him. And if his love for me wax stronger, God will establish his ascendancy over all the powers of earth and heaven. Thus have we breathed the spirit of power into all regions.
Any thoughts on that weighty paragraph?
It kind of reminds me of I believe there's a quote that Shoghi Effendi says, someone who teaches in this day, or I forgot who says it, but like a thousand Jesus Christ would want to teach in this day. It's something,
Yeah.
I don't remember the exact. It kind of reminded me of that.
That's an excellent thing to think about, because he does talk about how Jesus longed to be part of this day. And all the previous messengers of God longed to be part of this day, because he says in the next paragraph, this is the King of days. The world of being shineth in this day with the resplendency of this divine revelation. The universe is wrapped in an ecstasy of joy and gladness. But he says, should even just one of us, all alone, arise to help bring this faith forward, God will bring all sorts of power to our efforts, even though we may have all of the forces of earth and heaven arrayed against us. And if we wax even stronger in our love, God will establish his ascendancy over all the powers of earth and heaven. I mean, this is how powerful we can become. It's like putting your finger in an electric socket, being able to use that power when you connect with Baha'u'lláh. So he's saying he is powerful, and all we have to do is our part, and God is going to make us victorious no matter who is against us, which is such a wonderful promise to us. All right, so let's see. Martin, can you go down to be ye fair, all ye peoples of the world? He says, here's who I am. You have to understand that I am the one who conversed with God. So he's talking about Moses. I am the one who conversed with God, have longed to attain the beauty of whose countenance God's well-beloved Muhammad had yearned to behold. Though through the potency of whose love the Spirit of God, Jesus, ascended to heaven, for whose sake the primal point, the Bab, offered up his life. He's saying Moses, Muhammad, Jesus, the Bab, all longed to serve him and communed with him. And he says to us, Imam, can you read what's in yellow highlighted here?
Yeah. Seize your chance. He admonishes his followers, inasmuch as a fleeting moment in this day exhaleth centuries of a bygone age. Neither sun nor moon hath witnessed a day such as this. It is evident that every age in which a manifestation of God hath lived is divinely ordained and may, in a sense, be characterized as God's appointed day. This day, however, is unique and is to be distinguished from those that have preceded it. The designation seal of the prophets fully reveals and demonstrates its high station.
Anyone know what is meant by seal of the prophets? What's he referring to there?
Is it the cycle of the prophets, and then Baha'u'lláh starting a new cycle?
That's right, exactly. So Muhammad called himself seal of the prophets, which means the last period of the cycle of prophesying his coming, of the golden age. Now we are in the age of fulfillment. We've passed beyond the period of prophecy. Now we're in the age of fulfillment. So obviously none of us know what it was like to live in the day before Baha'u'lláh. We didn't do that. So it's hard to get our head around what that means. But one of the things, when the first Western pilgrims went to the Holy Land, the first Western pilgrims were mainly a group of young women in their 20s, most of whom came from California. And one of the things that Abdu'l-Baha constantly pointed out to them, he pointed out early Christian saints such as Mary Magdalene, Saint Barbara, for whom Santa Barbara is named. And he reminded them that those women had the same amount of hours in the day as people do today. And they had fewer resources available to them to achieve what they were able to achieve. So his message to this group of young women that included people like Ella Goodall Cooper from the Oakland, California, was you have more resources than they did. You can be even greater than they were because of the day that you live in. All right, so my team, can you go down to these bullet points, please? Okay, so now Baha'u'lláh is talking about the latent forces in his revelation. And let's see who I can pick on to read these bullet points. Shaheen, could you run through the bullet points for us? Read those, please.
Sure. Through the movement of our pen of glory, we have, at the bidding of the omnipotent ordainer, breathed a new life into every human frame and instilled into every word a fresh potency. All created things proclaim the evidences of this worldwide regeneration. This is, he adds, the most great, the most joyful tidings imparted by the pen of this wronged one to mankind. How great, he in another passage exclaims, is the cause, how staggering the weight of its message. This is the day of which it hath been said, O my son, verily God will bring everything to light, though it were but the weight of a grain of mustard seed and hidden in a rock, or in the heavens or in the earth, for God is subtle, informed of all. By the righteousness of the one true God, if one speck of a jewel be lost and buried beneath a mountain of stones, and lie hidden beyond the 7 seas, the hand of omnipotence will surely reveal it in this day, pure and cleansed from dross. He that partaketh of the waters of my revelation will taste all the incorruptible delights ordained by God from the beginning that hath no beginning to the end that hath no end. Every single letter proceeding from our mouth is endowed with such regenerative power as to enable it to bring into existence a new creation. A creation, the magnitude of which is inscrutable to all save God. He verily hath knowledge of all things. It is in our power, should we wish it, to enable a speck of floating dust to generate, in less than the twinkling of an eye, suns of infinite, of unimaginable splendor, to cause a dewdrop to develop into vast and numberless oceans, to fuse into every letter such a force as to empower it to unfold all the knowledge of past and future ages. We are possessed of such power, which, if brought to light, will transmute the most deadly of poisons into a panacea of unfailing efficacy.
Any thoughts?
About the how like this world, like even a fleeting moment in our time, the day of God is greater than all the times of the bygone ages before it.
Right.
I was thinking about all the activity that goes around on Earth and every fleeting moment right now. How many trillions of bits of data is being exchanged through
Hmm.
the internet, different operating systems? How busy factory workers are around the world, coordinated into producing products. Or just everything that we do has been amplified so many times, and also our knowledge base, our social discourse, everything.
Hmm.
It's as if every time before this, it's as if the human race was, practically non-existent.
I think that's really an important point. And we know that the technology came into existence at the time it did because it was the will of God that it come into existence at this time. For example, we know that when the Bab was on that terrible sea voyage on his way to Mecca, he prayed that God would give us better technology for sea voyages. And we did. We got better, safer ships. And it was because of that prayer of the Bab. So, but at this time, we have access to so much more information, but also everything is new and different. One of the things, we know that the writings often talk about the analogy of the human species as being like a child, and how we have just come out of our childhood and have gone into adolescence. Well, we know that when a human being hits puberty, they are biologically programmed to change. And part of their change is new capacities, new abilities that they didn't have in the period of childhood. Abdul Baha says in one of the newly translated quotes that the House of Justice has made available in the last few years, that as a person reaches maturity, reaches age 15, they can learn in a day what it took a whole year for them to learn in childhood. So our capacities just suddenly went that much greater, because it was like Baha'u'lláh turned on those genes that were latent within the human species to make us suddenly go into puberty, so that we could have greater spiritual powers. But he's saying here, even as much as he has regenerated us and made us new, he has even more power that he didn't even bring forth. So one of the things as a historian, I try to remember is I can't really judge the people of the past, because they didn't have this advantage like we do. The people that lived before Baha'u'lláh. And as the next manifestation gives us even more power, we'll be looked upon in this time as not as well developed. But look at the great quantum leap we have made. Martine, can you scroll down? Next. Okay, let's stop at the station of the new believer. Hoda, can you read the next paragraph, please? Estimating the station of the true believer.
Sure, hi, of course. Estimating the station of the true believer, he remarks, by the sorrows which afflict the beauty of the all-glorious, such is the station ordained for the true believer, that if, to an extent smaller than a needle's eye, the glory of that station were to be unveiled to mankind, every beholder would be consumed away in his longing to attain it. For this reason, it has been decreed that in the earthly life, the full measure of the glory of his own station should remain concealed from the eyes of such a believer. If the veil be lifted, he similarly affirms, and the full glory of the station of those who have turned wholly towards God and in their love for him renounce the world, be made manifest, the entire creation would be dumbfounded. Do you want me to continue?
No, that's a good place to stop. Any thoughts about this? None of us knows what our own spiritual station is, or what the person sitting next to us, what their spiritual station is. But what a wonderful thing it seems to be if you achieve that high station of being a true believer. It's interesting. Go ahead. Yeah.
Is it saying like if we were able to see each other's spiritual station, how the entire creation would be kind of like ridiculed in a way?
Well, dumbfounded means absolutely astonished.
Exactly, like astonished, like
Yeah,
either in a bad way or in a good way, but I'm not thinking it's in a good way.
Well, you might find out that the janitor has a much higher station than the CEO, you know?
Exactly.
Most likely that's true. You know, one of the things that was interesting was that Abdul Baha and Chogi Effendi appointed named a number of people to be hands of the cause after they passed away. So during their lifetime, they didn't know that they had the station of a hand of the cause. And the fact that they pointed it out after the person had died, to my mind, was a way of saying to the friends, look at this person. Look at what they achieved spiritually. And so you can look at their lives as examples of what you can do if you apply yourself. Because these people didn't start off being born hands of the cause. They had to work at it. And so when he appointed living hands of the cause, first in 1950, well, in 48, he told Amelia Collins, but in 1951, he started appointing them. Everyone was dumbfounded that he was telling people that they had a station before they died. But all of us have a station. We all have a spiritual station. We just don't know what it is in this world. And in some ways, that probably keeps us from despairing too much. All right, so he talks about this dispensation as compared with the dispensation preceding it. And he says, so tremendous is the outpouring of divine grace in this dispensation that if mortal hands could be swift enough to record them, within the space of a single day and night, there would stream verses of such number as to be equivalent to the whole of the Persian Bayan. Now, interestingly enough, when he's talking to the whole of the Persian Bayan, in many ways he's talking about all of the verses that the Bab revealed. Well, the Bab actually wrote almost as many verses in 6 years as Baha'u'lláh did in 3 decades. And the Bab had a lot of time to write, for one thing, being in prison most of his ministry. But he's saying that he could even equal what the Bab did in 1 day and night, if he wanted to. All right. So, Manav, could you read the next section? That's it's this bullet. Give heed to my warning, ye people of Persia, and then there's some bullet points.
Sure. Give heed to my warning, ye people of Persia. He thus addresses his countrymen. If I be slain at your hands, God will assuredly raise up one who will fill the seat made vacant through my death. For such is God's method carried into effect of old, and no change can ye find in God's mode of dealing. Should they attempt to conceal his light on the continent, he will assuredly rear his head in the midmost heart of the ocean, raising his voice, proclaim, I am the life-giver of the world. And if they cast him into a darksome pit, they will find him seated on earth's loftiest heights, calling aloud to all mankind. Lo, the desire of the world is come in his majesty, his sovereignty, his transcendent dominion. And if he be buried beneath the depths of the earth, his spirit soaring to the apex of heaven shall peal the summons. Behold ye the coming of the glory. Witness ye the kingdom of God, the most holy, the gracious, the all-powerful.
One more bullet point. Can you get
Within
that?
the throat of this youth is yet another astounding statement. There lie prisoned accents which, if revealed to mankind to an extent smaller than a needle's eye, would suffice to cause every mountain to crumble, the leaves of the trees to be discolored and their fruits to fall, would compel every head to bow down in worship, and every face to turn in adoration towards this omnipotent ruler, who at sundry times and in diverse manners appeareth as a devouring flame, as a billowing ocean, as a radiant light, as a tree which, rooted in the soil of holiness, lifteth its branches and spreadeth out its limbs as far as and beyond the throne of deathless glory.
So, what is he saying to the people of Iran? Anyone have any comments, thoughts about this?
I think he's trying to give them like a message of steadfastness. Overall saying, well, from the first bullet point, or I can't tell if that's the first one, but he's saying basically, if anything were to happen to him, someone else would carry on the work. And if in the second one, I think his point is that if there are any enemies of the cause of God who are successful in, let's say, what's the word? Preventing the spread of the word of God, then eventually it's going to be successful. And in the last one, it's just says that if it be the will of God, then this task could happen in an instant. And so I think overall the message is that the faith of God will triumph in the end. So don't fear, followers.
So he's saying to the followers, don't fear. It's going to happen anyway. They can't do anything that's going to stop it. But he's also saying to the clergy of Iran, the Ayatollahs, that don't mess with this, because if you do, you're not going to get anywhere. God is going to make this happen. This, should they attempt to conceal his light on the continent, he will assuredly rear his head in the midmost heart of the ocean. I remember Dr. Jane Faley talking about this one time in a speech many years ago, where she said that, you know, when the Guardian was making plans to build a house of worship in Iran outside of Tehran, they had the site and everything. And then the government, I think, confiscated it, made it impossible for them to move forward with building a house of worship. So the Guardian decided if they couldn't do it in Iran, they would build one in Australia, and they'd build the Kampala, Uganda house of worship. So he says, if they conceal his light on the continent, in the middle of the continent of Asia, we couldn't build the house of worship. So we'll build one in the ocean in Sydney, Australia, and we'll build one in Samoa, and we'll build one in Uganda. So you can stop us one place, but you can't stop us every place. And that he has the power to make everybody on the earth believe in him. He's just not choosing to do that.
Is that, you know, related to kind of like what happened with the Bob, like the first section right here, is if it
Mhm.
to the people, like, is that why Baha'u'lláh came? Because the Bob was slain in the hands of the people? And let's say he hadn't died, let's say he had lived on to, you know, 80 years old, would there be a need about, so like a lot of people ask that, and I always wanted to know, like, is it because he died that Baha'u'lláh came up? And what if Baha'u'lláh would have been killed? Would someone else would have been shown up like a year later?
Well, what does some of the rest of you think about that question? Anyone else want to answer, Mateen?
Well, I think it was definitely known to the Bab that he was going to be martyred. I think he knew very early on that it was his destiny. I don't know if that's the right word, but he knew that he was going to be martyred eventually. I think in the Dawnbreakers, there's several places where he makes mention of that. So I think that the overall plan was always for there to be two manifestations of God, the Bab and Baha'u'lláh. But what I wonder is if there, I mean, obviously Baha'u'lláh was not, thankfully he did not suffer martyrdom. But what I wonder is when it says that someone else would fill the seat made vacant through my death, well, manifestations of God are born differently. So since birth, they have the Holy Spirit, or they have this, they're not regular individuals. So what I wonder is, were there people who were already born this way, who were kind of in reserve for that to happen? Or would that have happened, let's say 20, 30 years later when they had grown and matured, is what I'm wondering. But of course, that didn't happen, and maybe that was never meant to happen.
But you know, we don't know the answer to that one. For example, in working on the gate, one of the things I discovered in reading an old article from Firuz Kazemzadeh that was in World Order back in the 1960s was there were two other people who could have taken the place of Syed Kazem and Sheikh Ahmad, who were born in what at that time was the southeastern part of the Soviet Union and the Islamic part of it. They had such a following. They were also talking about the coming of the promised one of Islam. And in the Baha'i writings, they're referred to as the lights or something like this, so that there actually is a scriptural basis acknowledging them. But they somehow were not able to be, their mission wasn't as full as Sheikh Ahmad and Syed Kazem, but it's something had happened to one of those. They were there in what's now Southern Soviet Union, and one of probably Azerbaijan or Turkmenistan, I can't remember which one, already raised up. So who knows, maybe there were spares on the earth who just didn't have to manifest themselves. But it's also very interesting in studying Kitabi Agdas, Baha'u'lláh toward the end of the Agdas talks about the school that he attended. And he says that the school existed before there was a creation. So what that meant to me, looking at those passages, and I recommend that you folks go and look at the Kitabi Agdas, it's that God had set up a way to train existence before he created existence. So he, even before he created human beings, he created a means to educate us. So he talks about, he and the manifestations of God went to this, had this school, this ability, this process by which they were, God educated them as to what they were supposed to know and to be able to impart to mankind. And it's all systematic and it's all laid out in advance. So we can't fully understand it, but Baha'u'lláh has given us some intriguing clues. Mateen, can you scroll down again? By the way, just to remind those of you who weren't here last week, I put the bullet points in. The Guardian doesn't write with bullet points.
I have a question.
Yes.
Before we begin, can you scroll back up, please?
Sure. Mateen?
To the middle one. Should the
Yeah.
should they attempt to conceal his light on the continent, he will surely rear his head in the midmost heart of the ocean. Would you, was there any comment on this?
I had commented a little bit that one person pointed out how that sort of literally happened. That when the Guardian planned on raising up the Mazar al-Azkar in Iran, which would have been in the light on the continent, and was prevented from doing so because of the forces in Iran arrayed against the faith, that he decided to compensate for it by building the one in Sydney, Australia, which is in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, and also Kampala, and I think maybe started the work on Samoa. So, you know, it doesn't matter. Anyway, that was my comment on it. But
for me,
did you have a comment?
Well, I just think for me, the one in Western Samoa is the most, because it's a tiny island.
Yeah.
The most surrounded ocean, you know, ocean-wise.
Yeah.
Australia's, you know, it's an island, but it's, you know, it's a continent.
Right. Right.
Too big to just, yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
definitely.
So I think, yeah. So it doesn't matter. If they stop us in one place, we're going to pop up somewhere else. I often think about that when I see the Iranian government systematically trying to undermine us. How are they going to undermine all those Baha'i villages in the upper highlands of Papua New Guinea? There's just no way they're going to do that. Okay, so Shaheen, could you, since we got you, could you read the next paragraph, please?
Anticipating the system which the irresistible power of his law was destined to unfold in a later age, he writes, "The world's equilibrium hath been upset through the vibrating influence of this most great, this new world order. Mankind's ordered life hath been revolutionized through the agency of this unique, this wondrous system, the like of which mortal eyes have never witnessed. The hand of omnipotence hath established his revelation upon an unassailable and enduring foundation. Storms of human strife are powerless to undermine its basis, nor will men's fanciful theories succeed in damaging its structure."
So any comments on that?
I think this is kind of reiterating a little bit, in a way, what we've already read before, maybe in one of those bullet points that farther back, that was kind of describing how this current age that we're in is very unique, and it's like a whole new chapter kind of in the grand scheme of mankind. I think it's saying, like mortal eyes have never witnessed anything like this. It's been revolutionized. Everything is different now, I think.
He's really saying that he's not only recreated mankind and given us new capacities in this day, but he's given us a new way of organizing ourselves through the administrative order and all the principles of how to vote, you know, how our bodies that make decisions arrive at those decisions through consultation, the laws that for human behavior that he's given us, that we've never seen anything like this system before. Most of the world has not experienced democracy until the coming of Baha'u'lláh. But it is not a pure democracy, the system he's come up with. And we also have, as part of the system, the learned. He says in the Kitabiyat, blessed are the rulers and the learned in El Baha. And so the learned are part of the system too. The counselors, having auxiliary board members that can consult with and serve as advisors to all of our. We've never had anything like this before. And he says that we don't need to worry about whether it will be damaged because God has made it unassailable. It doesn't matter what happens in the world. The administrative order is going to emerge undamaged in its structure. So then he goes on in the Surah Haikal, one of the most weighty of Baha'u'llah's works. You know, this is the one that Baha'u'llah wrote in the form of a 5-pointed star, which is the symbol for a human being. And he's talking about his own human temple. He's now explaining his relationship to God. So, Sarush, could you read this this paragraph with its bullet points, please?
In the Surat al-Haykal, one of the most challenging works of Baha'u'llah, the following verses, each of which testifies to the resistless power infused into the revelation proclaimed by its author, have been recorded. Naught is seen in my temple but the temple of God, and in my beauty but his beauty, and in my being but his being, and in myself but his self, and in my movement but his movement, and in my acquiescence but his acquiescence, and in my pen but his pen, the mighty, the all-praised. There hath not been in my soul but the truth, and in myself naught could be seen but God. The Holy Spirit itself hath been regenerated through the agency of a single letter revealed by this most great Spirit, if ye be of them that comprehend. Within the treasury of our wisdom there lies unrevealed a knowledge, one word of which, if we chose to divulge it to mankind, would cause every human being to recognize the manifestation of God and to acknowledge his omniscience, would enable everyone to discover the secrets of all the sciences and to attain so high a station as to find himself wholly independent of all past and future learning. Other knowledges do we as well possess, not a single letter of which we can disclose, nor do we find humanity able to hear even the barest reference to their meaning. Thus have we informed you of the knowledge of God, the all-knowing, the all-wise. The day is approaching when God will have, by an act of his will, raised up a race of men, the nature of which is inscrutable to all save God, the all-powerful, the self-subsisting.
Martin, can you scroll up, please? A little bit.
He will ere long out of the bosom of power draw forth the hands of ascendancy and might, hands who will arise to win victory for this youth, and who will purge mankind from the defilement of the outcast and the ungodly. These hands will gird up their loins to champion the faith of God, and will in my name and the self-subsistent, the mighty, subdue the peoples and kindreds of the earth. They will enter the cities and will inspire with fear the hearts of all their inhabitants. Such are the evidences of the might of God. How fearful, how vehement is his might.
Any thoughts about these weighty passages? that second bullet point where it says, the Holy Spirit itself hath been generated through the agency of a single letter revealed by this most great Spirit, if ye be of them that comprehend. I don't think I can count myself among those who comprehend what he means by the Holy Spirit being generated through the agency of a single letter revealed by this most great Spirit. So he's talking about a power beyond the Holy Spirit. We know the Holy Spirit is personified in the angel Gabriel talking to Muhammad. But the maiden, that the vision of the maiden with Baha'u'lláh. But he's saying that this most great Spirit is even greater than the Holy Spirit. And I can't get my head around the Holy Spirit, so I certainly don't understand what he's talking about there. Does anyone want to venture a hazard a guess what Baha'u'lláh is talking about there?
Energy.
Energy.
So just as you have the energy that comes from Baha'u'lláh to creation and is moving the world as we speak, so too is Baha'u'lláh receiving energy, because Baha'u'lláh is not God. Baha'u'lláh receives energy from God, but does not actually know the essence of God. Baha'u'lláh moves at the bidding of God, the primal will. So between the primal will and between the primal will and Baha'u'lláh, you have the most great Spirit. And it's the Holy Spirit that through Baha'u'lláh we are able to receive. But the point is, it's like a step down transformer. Baha'u'lláh processes that energy for us and provides us what we can bear at the time, depending on what we're actually able to sustain.
Right.
So the premise is, are we able to be channeling agents ourselves for the little bit of energy that Baha'u'lláh gives us, whereas Baha'u'lláh, being the one who channels whatever he wants, receives from a greater source that energy.
That's a good explanation. Any other comments on any of these particular quotes in this collection?
I'm a fan of the very first part of the quote. That's like, not is seen in my temple, but the temple of God.
Yes.
And then like
yes.
the rest of that paragraph. And it's like, I thought it was referring to the Bab at first, but then I realized like it said my pen. And I was like, when it's like my pen, I'm like, oh, that's, pen is usually like a reference to Baha'u'llah. But
Right.
like, I like the way in which it's capitalized, and the way in which like God is like, obviously it's talking about God as well, because that's like capitalized as well. But like to have like greeted, like to have met Baha'u'llah is like the closest to like meeting God in that sense. But also to like pray to like Baha'u'llah in a sense is to like pray to God. I mean, that's like just a reference like the purpose of the manifestations and of the prophets, and like that, like being like that mediator.
Yeah. You're exactly right. He is all that we know of God is what we see in Baha'u'lláh. And it's interesting, he refers to himself, his essence is my temple. But that temple, his essence, inner essence, or the essence of Baha'u'lláh, he is the temple of God to our eyes. And but he's talking about himself as though he's a temple, which is a very deep way to think of himself. My beauty, but his beauty. My being, but his being. Myself, but his self. My movement, but his movement. My acquiescence, but his acquiescence. My pen, but his pen. So we can't know any more about God than what we can see through Baha'u'lláh. So very, very good insight. All right, let's move on, because I'm also looking a little bit at the clock, and I know it's getting late. So Martin, can you go down to the next? Okay. So now we're moving from these two passages of Abdul Baha, the appointed interpreter. and some of the utterances that show further light upon this theme. So, Willie, could you perhaps read the bullet points here? Centuries, nay, ages may pass away. We're now reading the master.
Of course. Do I read the entire paragraph of that simple highlighted text, or do I
That would
read
be
just-
fine. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I don't mind. Okay. Such is, dearly beloved friends, Baha'u'llah's own written testimony to the nature of his revelation, to the affirmations of the Bab, each of which reinforces the strength and confirms the truth. Of these remarkable statements I have already referred. What remains for me to consider in this connection are such passages in the writings of Abdul Baha, the appointed interpreter of these same utterances, as throw further light upon and amplify various features of this enthralling theme. The tone of his language is indeed as emphatic, and his tribute no less glowing than that of either Baha'u'llah or the Bab. Centuries, nay, ages must pass away, he affirms in one of his earliest tablets, ere the day star of truth shineth again in its midsummer splendor, or appeareth once more in the radiance of its vernal glory. How thankful must we be for having been made, in this day, the recipients of so overwhelming a favor. Would that we had 10,000 lives, that we might lay them down in thanksgiving for so rare a privilege, so high an attainment, so priceless a bounty. The mere contemplation, he adds, of the dispensation inaugurated by the Blessed Beauty would have sufficed to overwhelm the saints of bygone ages, saints who long to partake for one moment of its great glory. The holy ones of past ages and centuries have each and all yearned with tearful eyes to live, though for one moment, in the day of God. Their longings unsatisfied, they repair to the great beyond. How great, therefore, is the bounty of the Abba Beauty, who, notwithstanding our utter unworthiness, hath through his grace and mercy breathed into us, in this divinely illumined century, the spirit of life, hath gathered us beneath the standard of the beloved of the world, and chosen to confer upon us a bounty for which the mighty ones of bygone ages had craved in vain. The souls of the well-favored among the concourse on high, he likewise affirms, the sacred dwellers of the most exalted paradise are in this day filled with burning desire to return onto this world, that they may render such service as lieth in their power to the threshold of the Abba Beauty.
So, how does that make you folks feel? How does that make you feel about your lives? What you do with your lives? Does these words of Abdul Baha speak to you directly?
I think this makes us feel very blessed. I mean, you could be a person who knows nothing about religion and maybe even knows nothing about science. Oh, it's not nothing, but someone has some level of appreciation for the technology we have and the day and age that we live in. And yet you could be a believer of Baha'u'llah and read this text here and gain a whole new appreciation for the significance of this age that we live in. It's really crazy to think about. I can't believe it, honestly, but I feel blessed. It's really a blessing.
So it's a blessing we don't want to throw away, right? You know, we had a memorial service last night in our community in Pinellas County for the two House of Justice members and the ITC member, Dr. Arbab, Mr. Martin, and Violette Hack, who just recently passed away. And you know, the one thing I can say, having spent 18 years in the Holy Land and having the blessing of knowing House members and members of the teaching center, and even some of the hands of the cause, is what distinguished those people was that they were very serious about studying the writings and trying to put them into practice in their life. And at some point, they basically turned their life over to the faith. And all of them in the process became incredible people, but also had extremely rich lives. You know, they had experiences that most of us would never even dream of. Violette Hack got asked to go to Wallis and Fortuna Islands in the middle of nowhere and to meet the three kings of those islands to try to convince them to let the Baha'i faith come to those communities. And if you hear her account of what she did to even go there, I mean, she was glad she brought a jar of peanut butter in her suitcase. Wouldn't have had much to eat otherwise. You know, the kinds of rich experiences these people have when they throw their heart and their life into the faith. It's amazing, and also because we're living in a time where the potential is so great. We have been really blessed. He says that the day will come when the light of divine unity will have so permeated the East and West that no man will dare any longer ignore it. Whatever is latent in the innermost of this holy cycle shall gradually appear and be made manifest. For now is the beginning of its growth and the day spring of the revelation of its signs. Ere the close of this century and of this age, it shall be made clear and evident how wondrous was that springtime and how heavenly was that gift. So we who labor in this faith do so with the knowledge that we may not seem like we're doing very much. And it seems like we're being ignored by most of the people of the world. But we know that this is destined to be a very big thing. That what we are doing today will shine hundreds of years from now. And your ancestors, your descendants will look back on you and call you blessed because of what you are able to do in this time, before the faith is so widely known. And then going on further, you notice the guardian repeats himself a lot. He talks about the exalted rank of the true believer again. And he says, is the same as the one ordained for such prophets of the house of Israel as are not regarded as manifestations endowed with constancy. It means that you and I, if we become true believers, can in the sight of God be an Ezekiel, a Jeremiah, a Elijah, equivalent to a prophet of the house of Israel, not designated as a manifestation endowed with constancy. In other words, not one given a book like Moses. And that's pretty mind-blowing. All right, Martine, can you scroll down, please? Now Bahá'u'lláh is, can you keep going a little bit so that we, okay. Right. Back up a bit. Sorry. Okay, here we go. That's good. Now he's talking about the manifestations that will follow him. The future. Let's see. Sarvi, are you available to read this paragraph?
Yeah, of course.
Please.
In connection, that one?
Yeah, let me, let's see. In connection, yes. And if you could actually keep on going, because that's short, and then going into the next one.
Sure.
Read that, please. Okay, great.
Of course. In connection with the manifestations destined to follow the revelation of Baha'u'lláh, Abdu'l-Baha makes this definite and weighty declaration. Concerning the manifestations that will come down in the future, in the shadows of the clouds, know verily that in so far as their relation to the source of their inspiration is concerned, they are under the shadow of the ancient beauty. In their relation, however, to the age in which they appear, each and every one of them doeth whatsoever he willeth. O my friend, he thus addresses in one of his tablets. Oh, sorry, one second. Sorry. He thus addresses in one of his tablets a man of recognized authority and standing. The undying fire which the Lord of the kingdom hath kindled in the midst of the holy tree is burning fiercely in the midmost heart of the world. The conflagration it will provoke will envelop the whole earth. Its blazing flames will illuminate its peoples and kindreds. All the signs have been revealed. Every prophetic allusion hath been manifested. Whatever hath been enshrined in all the scriptures of the past hath been made evident. To doubt or hesitate is no more possible. Time is pressing. The divine charger is impatient and can tarry no longer. Ours is the duty to rush forward and, ere it is too late, win the victory. And finally, is this most stirring passage which he, in one of his moments of exultation, was moved to address to one of his most trusted and eminent followers in the earliest days of his ministry. What more shall I... Yeah, thank you. What more shall I say? What else can my pen recount? So loud is the call that reverberates from the Abha kingdom that mortal ears are well nigh deafened with its vibrations. The whole creation, methinks, is being disrupted and is bursting asunder through the shattering influence of the divine summons issued from the throne of glory. More than this I cannot write.
Any thoughts, comments, questions?
Can we scroll back up to the previous thing about you saying about
You went too far, Akeem. Yeah, the one about the manifestations to follow.
no, before that actually, about
Okay.
ones that don't have a book.
Is that good enough?
I think, hold on, maybe right there. Let's see here. No, I guess maybe it's higher up actually. Okay, right here maybe. Passage and writings. You will. Hands will arise to win victory over this youth. Yeah. Okay. Okay, I guess. Okay. One more up. One more. Okay, stop right here. Okay, right. I think here. The day is approaching when God will have, by an act of his will, raised up a race of men of the nature of which is inscrutable to all save God. Yeah, I think this is the aim, I think, of the human race right now. But no, you had mentioned, I was thinking about this, you had mentioned something about people who are manifestations and potential, you said, but may not be revealing a book. Is that something that did you mention something like that, or did I just misinterpret?
Well, if you go down, Martin, can you go down a bit? It talks, okay, here we go. It talks about prophets of the house of Israel. We had it there for a second. Let me see. Nope, go back up again a little bit. Okay. Prophets, there you go, stop. Up. prophets of the house of Israel, as are not regarded as manifestations endowed with constancy. And there are other places where Shoghi Effendi explains what manifestations endowed with constancy means. And that means that they come with a book. In fact, it may be a little bit further down in this.
Why can't I find it? I don't know where you're. The problem is I'm having difficulty actually seeing what you're seeing. Maybe is there?
Oh,
something-
okay. Do you see in confirmation of the exalted rank of the
it's
true
in that-
believer?
Oh, it's in that one. Okay, there it is.
Yeah,
It's
there.
in
Yes,
as
at the last line of that. I mean, I find that to be a really intriguing
not
station.
regarded.
Sentence, because it has, not only is it what it has to say to us about our potential, but talking about manifestations endowed with constancy. So, we know I believe Baha'u'lláh or Abdul Baha said Rumi, the poet Rumi, was sort of one of these equivalents of a prophet of the house of Israel under the shadow of Muhammad. And there will be other people like that. But, the Old Testament is full of these people who are what in Christian terminology you would call minor prophets. And then in the Baha'i writings, it talks about manifestations endowed with constancy versus these lesser manifestations who are not endowed with constancy. These are people sent by God, but they don't reveal a book. They aren't given a book. So they don't have really a dispensation. They're part of a bigger dispensation. They're sort of like a minor, I guess they sort of keep things going in between a manifestation endowed with constancy. But that's just my understanding of it. And there are some passages we're coming to shortly where it will talk about the book. So let's see.
Sometimes I wonder about the station of Qudus. That's why I asked.
Yeah. Well, Qudus is, I don't understand the station of Qudus, but he may well be in that category, like a Jeremiah or an Ezekiel in the Old Testament, Elijah.
Is this different from being regarded as the concourse on high?
Well, I think that these people in the next world are part of the concourse on high. But here's something to also sort of try to get your mind around this. One time, Abdul Baha was speaking with Helen Ellis Cole. She was May Maxwell's cousin who became a devoted believer. She was on the 1900 pilgrimage. Helen Ellis Cole was a widow. And Abdul Baha said to her that he had taken her under his care because her husband had asked him to do so. And she was sort of taken aback by this because her husband had been dead for some years. And he said, yes, he said that to what worlds do you think I belong? He says, I am clear and manifest in all the worlds of God. So even though he was still physically on this earth, Abdul Baha was also had a presence in worlds beyond this world, where he's communing with people who are already dead. And then talking about them here in this world. I mean, it's like when Baha'u'lláh says that when Abdul Baha's little boy Hussein died, and he says to comfort Munir Kanu, he says, I see little Hussein in the next world, and he's very happy he's playing there. So there are these people who can transcend time and place and be in multiple worlds at the same time. So I think that many of the people in the Supreme Concourse also fall into the category of these prophets, manifestations, true believers. But also there is a place in the writings where Baha'u'lláh says that Jesus ascended to the seventh heaven. And we know that there are levels in the next world where souls such as ourselves go, but where there are other levels where the manifestations go where we don't go. And one of the things that's very intriguing there is that Baha'u'lláh says that Nawab will be his consort in all the worlds of God. Well, what does that mean? That means that if she in the next world stays with him at whatever level he is as a manifestation of God. So who does that make Nawab? I don't understand all these mysteries.
Well,
I'm just throwing
it
some
doesn't
stuff
make-
out there.
It doesn't make her a manifestation of God, but it makes her dependent because she's still
Yeah.
dependent on him. But
Yeah.
it's like basically saying if you have, you know, the manifestation of God is still the primary source.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
the sun and Nava. I mean, she can enjoy all that, but she can partake of it. But that doesn't mean that it's flowing from her center. It's just that she is in line with the center, so it can flow through her, but it's not flowing from her.
That's an interesting point. Abdu'l-Baha says his mother was created for Baha'u'lláh.
Yeah, totally. Makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah. So, you know, there are all these mystical aspects to this, you know.
There are, but the good thing is that because of as in some magic, well, the passage in one of Abdu'l-Baha's writings, he says like drops are patterned after seas, you know.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
we can make these inferences because although they have different stages, they still run on a universal pattern.
Mm-hmm. So it's all systematic. God has this all laid out. Anyway, now that the beloved guardian is directing us again, and I'm going to move us on a little bit to see. I don't know whether we'll finish this one tonight or not because it's we're getting a little long in this very weighty topic. But he again reminds us that we're in this unique cycle in the world's religious history, and that it's not even possible for us to really talk about this and to over exaggerate its significance.
I have a
or
question
overrate
for
its
you.
influence. Yes. Mm-hmm.
So I am looking at the Kitab-i-Iqan right before part 2.
Uh-huh.
It mentions that Jesus disappeared from the sight of his people and ascended into the fourth heaven.
Fourth heaven, right. I got the wrong number. Yeah.
Well, I
Mhm.
mean, I don't understand the purpose of 4, 7, and so forth. Like, I
Yeah.
don't understand these heavens. What's the difference between 4 and 7?
I don't know.
I mean, like, where is there like at all any elucidation on this at all anywhere? Like, I mean, I hear about these things. Like, people act like they know
Mhm.
about it. Like, you may hear a preacher somewhere talking about it, or Seventh-day Adventists talking about it. That's like Seventh Day. You know, that's one of their things. Like, I don't understand. People talk about it, but like, I've heard nothing in the Baha'i writings about this besides mention. So, like, I'm assuming that there's some source somewhere that elucidates on this.
Not necessarily. You know, if someone didn't ask for it to be elucidated, it might not have been. But it may well also be that there's some scholar out there who's read more and can read the text in Persian or Arabic, who may have run across a passage that elucidates these things. You know, you could write to someone like, I'd be happy to ask Hooper Dunbar if he knows any more. But to me, what that means is that even in the next world, there are levels. There are levels of being. And that we will continue to advance through levels, but that these we know manifestations of God are different in their essence from the souls of the creatures, and that they pre-exist. Our souls come into existence at conception. Theirs pre-exist, and that they have been through this school. So we don't fully understand. I mean, this is, you know, that one of the things that Baha'u'lláh has, we just have read some of the passages tonight. He constantly is telling us that there is much more that he knows that he just can't tell us because we're not ready for it. So maybe these are the kinds of things that in the next, when the next manifestation comes, we can say, you know, we were reading the Kitab Yagan and it says that Jesus is in the fourth heaven. Could you explain to us what that means? If we're ready to hear the answer, we'll hear the answer. But, you know, without being more of a scholar, I haven't read, I don't have any working knowledge of Arabic or Persian at all, John, other than Fes and June and Junum and a few other things of importance like that, halal. I can talk about food in Persian, but I can't talk about much else. So it would be good to find someone who could do that. But I think what they're trying to help us understand is there are many levels of spiritual development, both in this world and in the next. And some of them we can't even go to. Someone just sent a link. I didn't see it, but does Mujan explain some of that? Mujan Momin and Shaheen?
This is something that I think we should all at some point study together. It's and also many people, Baha'is, don't even know about it because it's under a provisional translation.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But I do know that in Islamic scholarship, the seventh heavens and all that is actually, it is from the Quran, but I can say, or maybe Hadith, I don't know. But the point is that Baha'u'lláh did speak in the language of his time to be able to convey what he wanted according to the understanding of the people. So I mean, it doesn't mean that we should kind of allude it as a strict literal interpretation. But what it does mean is that there are significances, and according to, you know, that use these similarities that he talks about, whether someone believes it's the seventh heaven or the fourth heaven, or any, you know, for example, like the seven valleys. I mean, is it only seven? Is it purely seven? Is it a hard stop, strict? Is one valley to the next a smooth transition, or is it like, you know, is it staggered like steps where you can't have half steps, you know? But I think one thing that maybe people would like to maybe either read together or on their own is to review that tablet that I sent, because that one actually talks about the stages of the soul. So basically actually teaches us how the soul, like the stages that the soul progresses through. And also it distinguishes between the soul of man and manifestation, and talks more about that, about their station.
Yes.
I think that in that sense, we could have a glimmer of what it means to be in like the seventh heaven, for example.
Right.
And yeah, like Shaheen said, I also put a link before he did. It's referring to Mr. Dunbar's book that talks about it too. So, about it being from Mathnava of Rumi.
I don't claim to be that kind of a scholar. I can tell you about American Baha'i history, but I haven't gotten into some of those more esoteric areas. But it's all very interesting, and I think that it helps us to be humble, but also at the same time to understand that we as mortals, we can't aspire to be manifestations, but we can still have very high spiritual stations if we exert the effort to develop that side of ourselves, to develop our spiritual nature. So I think that that's, to me, the most important takeaway from this. Dear friends, looking at the time, I'm thinking that maybe where the Guardian is now moving into another section here, this might be a good place to stop for this evening. And so next week we could finish the section on Baha'u'lláh, and because the section on the Bab is only 4 pages, hopefully we can get through that too. But thank you so much. This was, I thought, a very rich, wonderful session tonight because you folks made it so.
Thank you so much, Kathy. I quite agree.
Thanks, Kathy.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you so much, Kathy and
Well,
friends.
the Guardian can blow your mind.
This is how I
Okay.
relax on a Monday right after I get home from work.
Well, good.
It's
Well,
it's my version of it. It's how I relax. It really refreshes me. I'm glad to
Well, I'm
participate
so
as often as I can.
so glad you were part of this, John. So anyway, all right, dear friends.
I have
I'm
a quick
gonna
Surush,
yes.
the recording that you did, where are you gonna post it? So I know.
I'm thinking of making it an unlisted YouTube video, and I can
Okay.
share the link with you.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
Great. All right, dear friends. So I will look forward to seeing all of you next Monday.